بخير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات ربي وسلامه وبركاته عليه. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We continue in the explanation of Khutbah al-Haajah in the tremendous book of fiqh, Buloogh al-Maraam, which is from those books in which every student of knowledge, for the one who wants to strengthen himself in the aspect or affairs of jurisprudence or fiqh, then he starts with the likes of these books in order to reach the level of where he's strong in fiqh, till he can go to those books, what they call al-Kutub al-Fiqhiyya al-Muwassa'a, those books which broadens the affairs of fiqh, such as al-Mughni, and also likewise Bidayat al-Mujtahid, and also likewise other than those books in which they are like encyclopedias in fiqh, but before one reaches that level, then he has to memorize and he has to also master the likes of the books of Buloogh al-Maraam to strengthen his basis and his foundation before he reaches that level. We also explained the tremendous hadith about, and this is in regards to nikah, in regards to marriage. And we talked about how Islam is comprehensive for all affairs in regards to what is said even at the time of marriage. And we said that Khutbah al-Haajah, or what they call the prayer of need, that dua that one makes when he wants to marry two couples off. And as we'll talk about, some of the ulama say it is wajib, but that which is al-rajih, we will talk about and conclude in the end, that is highly recommended. It's highly recommended that he says this at the time when he wants to marry two couples. And at the time of the marriage, he mentions Khutbah al-Haajah. Like we talked about, it's not Khutbah tahajjud. Some people say Khutbah tahajjud or Khutbah tahajjud. It's not Khutbah tahajjud, it's Khutbah al-Haajah. Khutbah al-Haajah. Khutbah al-Haajah. So we remind the brothers and say, or the sisters also likewise, we stopped in the middle where it says, nastaghfiruhu, that we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness and we seek a refuge in Allah ta'ala from the evil of ourselves. If you notice in the hadith it says, nastaghfiruhu, nastaghfiruhu. We seek His forgiveness. We talked about last lesson that al-ghufran or forgiveness necessitates two things. Number one is that Allah ta'ala, that He covers up the sin of the slaves. As the verb ghafara. Ghafara, the origin of it linguistically is satara. It means to cover up something. It means to cover, and that affair in which we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover is our sins, and not for them to be exposed. For verily, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He covers up the sins of His slave in His dunya, then likewise He will cover up the sins of His slaves in the hereafter on the day of resurrection. So, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always that one will what? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only forgives the sin but cover it up. So number one is, or the first affair is, you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you seek His forgiveness, you're asking for Him to cover it up. Not just mere forgiveness and that's it. And there's not a slave from the slaves they are, except that he is subjected to falling into a mistake and making a sin. From the sagha'ir of the noob, especially from the minor. But Allah Ta'ala warns us of also likewise falling into the sins of that which is or the major sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us from falling and then staying away and avoiding the major sins, because they can be avoided. But Allah Ta'ala says in His book, He says, الَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشَ إِلَّا اللَّمَمْ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ وَاسِعُ الْمَغْفِرَةِ. If you notice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Najm, He says, those who abstain from the major sins, from the fawahish, that He was going to forgive, and His forgiveness is for those who abstain from the fawahisha, and the kaba'ir al-ithm, the major sins, those who avoid them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is saying that we have the ability to avoid the major sins. And He said also likewise al-fawahish, those abominations which are done, or those atrocities which are done with the private part. As we know, all of the slaves hence will fall into some type of sin from it being from the sagha'ir, from the minor sins, in which shows that we are, as human beings, will come up short, and we are well prone to falling into a mistake. And we are also likewise fallible creatures who are subjected to falling into those type of sagha'ir, or smaller or major or minor sins, minor sins. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Sahahu al-Imam al-Albani, where he said, وَمَا مِنَ عَبْدٍ, he says, لَيْسَ لَكَ, he said, اللهم اغفر إن كنت تغفر الجمة وما من عبد إلا له لمة. He said, إن تغفر اللهم إن تغفر الجمة وما من عبد إلا وله لمة. The Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, which al-Imam al-Albani authenticated, he said, there's not a slave, oh Allah, if you forgive, do you forgive for plenty of people. And there's not a slave from the slaves they are, except that he has a lemma. Notice the Prophet ﷺ said lemma. And lemma, if you look in the ayah, in Surah Al-Najm, say Allah Ta'ala will forgive the lemma. The lemma is the minor sins, as long as one doesn't consistently do it. As one consistently and does it on a consistent basis, and he persists in doing it, then the minor sins can become the major ones. The minor sins can become the major. But as for those major sins that one falls into, such as fornication, such as backbiting, such as falling into riba, being involved inside of those monetary transactions which involves usury or riba, those type of matters, they deserve a tawbah. They need a tawbah from Allah with the conditions fulfilled. And one removing himself from the sin after he's committed, then it's incumbent upon him to leave it off and abstain from doing it. And any type of way that it drove you down that road to make you fall into it, then you have to avoid it. And also likewise having that severe nadam, that remorse of what transpired. And also likewise, like we said, if it's a madhlama in which you oppress someone, or you stole it, or some type of money or something that you stole, to return it back to them. If it will not come as a result, a major evil, if you was to return it back to him. As we'll talk about in the details of which Ibn al-Qayyim had mentioned in regards to that which is a madhlama, or something that is taken from a person unjustly. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book that the major sins can be avoided. That they can be avoided from the major ones. He says, الَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشَ إِلَّا اللَّمَمْ. Allah Ta'ala says, those who abstain and stay far away from the kaba'ir al-ithm, from the major sins, and the fawahish, from those sins, those atrocities which are done with the private part. Because those affairs need tawbah. But then Allah Ta'ala made an exception from those sins that He will forgive, which is a lemam. And a lemam, like we talked about, is the minor sins. And it's just in that hadith that we just said, in which the Prophet ﷺ made that dua. He said, Allahumma in taghfir al-jamma. Allah lina abdin, o ma mina abdin illa walahu lamma. There's not a slave except that he has a lamma. That he has those minor sins that he possesses, that he wants Allah ta'ala to overlook and forgive. So we said, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, in regards to the seeking, or that istighfar, that one seeks forgiveness when he mentions Khutbah al-Haajah, the meaning of it is that you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover up your faults. And even if one is to fall into a major sin, he fulfills the shurut, or the conditions of tawbah, because the bab, or the door of forgiveness, is always open. Even if he falls into a major sin, he should not lose hope from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give up. Rather, he should continue in his diligence of trying to be upright and fulfill those conditions, and at the same time, he also should likewise perform istighfar. As we know, the Prophet ﷺ, in the sitting, the Sahaba used to count how many times while he was in the sitting that he used to seek the forgiveness of Allah, saying astaghfirullah, 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 astaghfirullah. That the Sahaba used to count how many times he used to say it. Some of them said that, which is 13 or 30 or 40. We keep saying it repetitively. To show the importance of what? Seeking istighfar. Whether it be in a state of when a person commits a major sin, or when he also likewise falls into a minor sin, he shall always, what everyone, make sure he complies and always does his best and put forth his utmost effort in what? Seeking istighfar. But like we said, the major sins needs what everyone? Needs tawbah, with the conditions fulfilled. And we said the conditions are what? Number one is having ikhlas in that tawbah, being sincere in it. Meaning it's only for him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two is that one refrains from doing the sin immediately. That he pulls out and stays away from the sin and does away with it altogether. And does away from it, he abstains from it and avoids it altogether, removing himself from the sin that he committed. Removing himself from the sin he committed immediately. Number two, after that, like we said, which is what everyone? Staying away from anything that led him down the road to fall into it. Abstaining from any type of way or means or method that led him into falling into it. For example, a person fell into fornication. What led you to it is what? Probably being on the phone, going out on the date alone, also being on social media, talking to it, or sending messages through Facebook or Instagram. Let's meet here. Let's go out here. Let's talk on the phone here. Come over my house. Those things is what led you down the road to the what? To the sin. Or, for example, a person fell into bid'ah. More than likely, he fell into bid'ah due to him going on certain websites and then having evil companions. Being around people of evil is usually you will find in most cases, is the biggest problem of what led a person down something evil. Him having evil people around him. Having a high influence on him until he was persuaded into believing what they believe. And that's a majority of people what happened during the past who fell into some type of bid'ah and even sometimes some type of sin. You'll find that he was hanging around the wrong people. He had the wrong type of people around him until he what? Fell into something that was a mukhalafa. That was in opposition to the religion. So we said that was number what, everyone? Number 3, right? Which is to stay away from and abstain from any type of method or road that took you down to make you fall into that sin. Number 4, of course, is al-azima ala adam al-auda ilayh. And that's part of the condition we said. That al-azima ala adam al-auda ilayh. To have that strong resolve never to return back to it. To have that strong resolve never to return back to the sin. Then after that is what? An-nadam ala ma fat. Is to have that severe remorse of what transpired and what took place. And some of them give another condition, which is it has to be at the time of exception, which is what, everyone? It has to be at the time of where it's not before you are dying and your soul's coming out of your body. What they call at the time, what they call waqt al-gharghara. Gharghara is the time where your soul is leaving your body and it makes the noise like. That's why they call it gharghara. The time gharagharaz, your soul is leaving your body, and it makes that sound. Here, tawbah doesn't benefit you. At this time, when you try to make tawbah, it doesn't benefit. And also they say when the sun comes up from what? طلوع الشمس من مغربها. When the sun rises from the west, then in that time likewise, tawbah will not benefit an individual or any iman or person's iman if he hadn't believed from before, or if he had not acquired for himself any type of good before that time. So we say that tawbah and seeking forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very important. And we talked about last lesson that istighfar, you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever you want, that He covers up your sin, and also likewise that He overlook it. So istighfar, number one, contains two meanings. Number one is that you're asking Allah to cover up the sin, and number two is that you're asking Him to overlook it. For one, that Allah covers up His faults and His sins in His dunya, then that is a good sign that Allah ta'ala will cover up His faults and sins on the day of resurrection. Also likewise it says, نَسْتَغْفِرُهُ, and we seek refuge in Allah. As we know, seeking refuge is from the affairs of worship, which is only exclusively for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as isti'adha, or seeking refuge, the isti'adha is from the aspects of worship. For one is not to seek refuge other than Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we know. And for one, that he gives that right of worship to other than Him, and he falls into isti'adha by giving refuge to other than Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, as far as in the aspect of worship, then he has fell into major shirk, major polytheism, where he will leave the fold of Islam and his Islam is nullified. For if a person says, I seek refuge in the jinn of this valley, or I seek refuge in your protection, O such and such jinn, or from the shayateen, as we know there are people out there that do worship the shayateen, and they ask them to give them protection and give them refuge. All of this is major polytheism. Major polytheism, which will nullify one's Islam, and if he dies in that state, he'll be in hell forever. So isti'adha, or seeking refuge, is only for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala exclusively, and only for Him solely alone. And it's not a right of other than Him tabaraka wa ta'ala. And as far as isti'adha in regards to giving refuge from the khalq, from the creation, then that is with the condition that he's alive. For example, if a person, can you give me refuge or protect me from such and such evil? Can I take refuge in your house? For that type of isti'adha is not worship. That isti'adha is something else. You're just asking one to give you protection. For here in this instance, it is permissible with the condition that he's able to do it and he's alive. He's able to do it and he's alive. Like, for example, can you protect me? There's something going on outside. I'm going to take refuge here in your house momentarily until it's over. Here, the individual is what? Qadir. He's able. And he's what? Alive. And he's also what? Present. For those three things are very important in trying to distinguish between what is the aspect of worship which is impermissible that one falls into, from seeking refuge as far as worship, meaning in affairs in which Allah is only able to do. And in regards to the human being that's alive, as we'll talk about that inshallah, which will come. So isti'adha, as we know, is from the aspects of worship, and it is not permissible to give refuge, seek refuge in other than Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as in the isti'adha of worship. Now, as far as, like we said, in regards to isti'adha from the human beings and the khalq, we said it's permissible with the condition that they're what? They're able, they're alive, and they're what? They're present. They're able, alive, and present. If they are not alive, then it's not permissible. How are you going to seek refuge in a person that's dead? And they're able. Meaning, for example, able meaning, for example, the weather. Or I see, oh Allah, or I'm asking an individual, can you change the weather for me by removing those people or making something happen that can remove this evil or change the course of what has happened in the existence. Only Allah could do that. You cannot ask an individual to do that. Change the course or the events of what happened. Can you change it? Or can you remove this evil, this harm that's taking place in the street? Just totally do with it simultaneously. remove it. Those things which are only in Allah's, His Qudrah and His ability, you cannot ask that from the khalq. You understand, everyone? So that is the type of isti'adah, so you can make the distinction between the two. So now it says we seek refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves. As we know, Musa, are you coming for the lesson or are you coming to be against the wall? You just here sitting here? Come here, Musa. Bring your chair. When you're learning at a class, you don't go like this. You don't be like this. That's not learning. Sit next to Abu Khalil and sit up straight. It says, we seek refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves. What is the meaning of the evil of ourselves? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested the khalq by predetermining and destining evil to happen in this earth. And from them, He has tested the slave with, is from having a shaitan upon every individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has coupled every human being of having a shaitan. And also likewise, yes, what's the dalil for that? The dalil for that is a Sahih Muslim. Where the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِنْ عَبْدٍ إِلَّا وَلَهُ قَرِينٌ قَالُوا وَمَا حَتَّى أَنْتَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ حَتَّى وَمَعِي قَرِينٌ إِلَّا أَعَانَنِي اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ فَأَسْلَمْ فَلَا تَأْمُرُنِي إِلَّا بِالْخَيْرِ. He said, there's not a person from the slaves there are except he has a qareen. He's not, except he has a qareen. I mean, it's something that's been appointed to him that Allah has tested him by. He says, even you, a messenger of Allah, he says, even me. He said, except that Allah aided me upon him and he became Muslim. He became Muslim except that He does not command me except to do good. So Allah Ta'ala has tested the human being by coupling him with something he will be tested with, as far as with evil. And also likewise of himself. As we know, oneself breaks down to three types. As the type of nafs, number one is what they call a nafs al-ammaratu al-nafs al-mutama'inna. The nafs, which is what they call mutama'inna. Yourself, you don't need to read it, Musa, just pay attention. Just look at me and pay attention. Just focus on what I'm saying. Sit up straight. Don't sit like that. Sit with your back straight. Don't sit like this. Sit straight up like this. You understand? You sit up. So this, the evil of ourselves. The first one is what they call, the first category of oneself, number one is what? What they call a nafs al-mutama'inna. That nafs that is at ease, that has that rest. So oneself is what they call mutama'inna. Mutama'inna means it's at ease. It's at ease. That soul that is at ease, the only way one attains that level is by two ways. He has to have ilm, and he has to work by what he knows until he attains the level of what he's at ease, or his soul is at ease. But for a soul that has iman, and he has purified his tawheed, and he has maintained his aqidah, and he has learned it properly, and he has also worked by what it necessitates, at the time of death, his soul will be in a state what they call tuma'nina, at ease. And that first type of soul, once you reach it and you have acclimated your soul to a point where it doesn't command except good, then this is what they call mutama'inna, that soul which is at ease, in which itself will what? Command you to do good. And then we'll also talk about how there's an angel that also likewise tries to encourage the human being to also do good, and which we'll speak about a little bit later. So the first type of nafs is what they call mutama'inna, that soul which is at ease, in which he commands the human being to do good. For that is the level in which one tries to make his soul acclimated to doing, by trying to consistently do good and do righteous actions until his soul commands him to do good all the time, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. But except, like we talked about before, every person is tested with some type of evil. And it's a test from him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to see whether or not we're going to obey that evil or to try to ward it off and fight it. Number 2, in regards to the second type of nafs, is what they call a nafs al-lawwama. The nafs which is blameworthy, that blames herself. That nafs that blames herself, which is the second category of ourselves, and what type of person, or what the type of individual, which is in yourself, of your nafs, is the second, which is called nafs al-lawwama. That nafs al-lawwama, that blameworthy nafs, in which it blames itself if you do or leave off some type of good, yourself will say, for example, why did you do that? It will try to blame you, to make you feel what? Some type of remorse or some type of regret in order for you to do it. As you'll find from the ulama, from Shaykh Uthaymeen, even mentions that, he says that nafs al-lawwama, that blameworthy type of nafs, he says sometimes it could be in the aspect of evil too. For example, if you leave off some type of evil that you missed, it'll even blame you in that aspect. For example, like, subhanAllah, you missed that evil. He says, so it can be an inclination towards that way of good or inclination towards evil. For a person that's in the state of lawwama, if he's prone to do good, then when he misses or he didn't attain of good, then his soul will constantly keep blaming and finding himself blameworthy, and in himself it will be blaming himself. Why didn't you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you do this? And that's a remorse that everyone feels, especially if one has true iman, that it's still intact and he still has a heart that's living. Then his soul will what? Blame him. And he'll feel that type of remorse for what evil that he left off, or that evil, that good that he didn't attain, or that good that he didn't perform. So the second type of category, second category is what, everyone? Al-lawwama, which is called that nafs that you'll find that is blameworthy. Like we said, it could be inclined towards this way or that way. But if one does, which is good, and he aspires towards performing a lot of good, then his soul will be inclined towards trying to find himself blameworthy in a good way. So one should strive in order to what? Do good. So in the aspect of that which is good, or his soul blaming himself, when he feels that he's left off something good, then it will try to encourage him to do it until that will be the thing that will take him over and push him towards. Now you're falling asleep, Moose. You go for one thing or another. You eat some food or something? Children, our generation. Allah aid our generation. I mean, because out there these days are going to get worse. If you're not preparing your children for what's going to be out here, by fortifying them with the aqidah and the tawheed, they're destroyed out here. All those things are out here. We're raising a generation of weak men. And we pacify them with worldly things. When the ultimate thing that you should be teaching them is strengthening them with the aqeedah and the tawheed. And likewise, try to also get them acclimated towards, even sometimes in the aspect of health, trying to get them to eat better too, so they could be energetic during the lessons. So that's also important. So we could get our people ready for what's out here. Because once we die, we're leaving our children in the field of where it's going to be a lot of evil. And if they're not prepared, they're done. They're destroyed out here. The generation where I grew up is totally different from the generation now that I see what's around us. It's totally different. People are less shy. People don't have no shyness. People are prone and they love to do evil. People just mean for no reason. People will try to knock you off your square. People do certain things just to be evil towards you. If you don't have the proper aqeedah to know how to have the tolerance level of things you're going to be tested with, then you're going to be prone to what? Deviating. So like I said, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid our children in this evil times that is coming up. And like I said, inshallah, it's just, sometimes, like I said, I see what's going on around us. You shake your head. Like we are really raising our children to be weak. For any rate, we say, ma'ashal ikhwa. So the second category is what? The second category is in regards to the nafs al-lawwama, the self which blames itself in an aspect for if one is to commit evil, then you'll find him that his soul blames himself for that evil that he missed. But if he does good and he constantly tries to fight himself and fight his soul even though it's inclined towards evil, you'll find that it is blameworthy even an aspect of good. Until, inshaAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him tawfiq, where his soul will override that evil, where he'll be inclined to do that which is good. But like we said, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, it's incumbent upon a person to try to perform an abundance of good so he could die in a state where his self is mutma'in, where it's at a state of ease. Because whoever wants to meet Allah and he loves to meet Allah, then Allah will love to meet him. And the one who hates to meet Allah, then Allah Ta'ala will hate to meet him. If one dies in a state and he loves to meet Allah, then Allah will love to meet him. And if one dies in a state and he hates to meet Allah, then Allah hates to meet him. So this is all in regards to aqeedah too. And not for one of you to die except that he has good thoughts about Allah. For one of us should not die except that he has good thoughts about his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can attain this except that he learns the correct aqeedah. For you'll be like the kuffar here who are lost. They'll say, why did Allah allow this to happen to so-and-so? Why did Allah allow these children to die? Why did Allah allow this event to happen? There isn't no God. That's all part of bad thoughts about Allah. Because a person doesn't know his aqeedah correctly. So we say, what's the last thing we talk about? So the second category is an-nafs al-lawwama. What's the third category? The third category is what they call an-nafs النفس الأمارة بالسوء. النفس الأمارة بالسوء. The evil that commands one, or the soul, or the self of one that commands it to do evil. So that's the third type. Constantly telling him to do evil on a consistent basis. That's the third type of what? Nafs. Al-Ammaratu bis-su', as Allah Ta'ala says, Surah Yusuf. Inna nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su'. Verily, oneself, it commands him to do evil. So that's the third type of nafs, in which one, if he constantly falls into evil, if he consistently does it, and his soul is inclined towards it, then that's a very dangerous state. Where he'll be in a state of where his soul or his self commands him to do evil consistently, which is a very, like we said, dangerous state. And no doubt, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, in regards to one's soul, that he works diligently on trying to perfect his heart so he can have his soul inclined towards doing good constantly. And like we said, it's a battle every day of one fighting his nafs and fighting and working diligently to purify his heart before he meets Allah and dying in that state. That is one of the most hardest things in which one sets out to actualize, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested all of us with. Is trying to purify his tawheed and meet Allah with a sound heart. Meeting Allah with a sound heart consists of what? Three things. Number one is, like we said, of one purifying his aqeedah. Purifying the aqeedah, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, is number one. Even if one has the Quran memorized. A lot of people think it's all about Quran being memorized. If my son right now had maybe one juz memorized, and he had all the usul and the foundations, if he had all the usul and the foundations of Islam, he understood them properly, and he had the proper aqeedah, and he had the proper and sound understanding of the sunnah as far as in the foundations and the belief system, and he was deep rooted in that, and his aqad and his minhaj was sound, and he had just maybe 2 chapters of the Quran memorized. It's better for him that he had the whole Quran memorized and he doesn't understand any aqeedah. And nor does he understand any aspects of principles. Because the principles is what brings out the fruits of how you understand the Quran properly. As you know, the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, that he said, تعلمنا القرآن تعلمنا الإيمان ثم تعلمنا القرآن ثم ازددنا بذلك إيمانا. The hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, he said that we learn Iman, then we learn the Quran. Meaning that we learn the Aqidah, the correct belief system. And we learn the correct methodology of how to apply it. Then we memorize it, we also what? Increase by that by our Iman. For if a person doesn't understand the Quran properly, even though he has it memorized, it'll be a what? It'll destroy him. It can even leave him down the path of deviance. As we know, there are people who are huffaz of the Quran, and they are leading the ummah down in destruction by propagating evil beliefs and wicked beliefs inside of the people, even though they have the whole Quran memorized. Why? Because they did not what? Attain those principles in order to understand it properly and attain the proper meaning so they can work by it and apply it properly. So that's the thing, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that's important. For if a person understands the usul and the foundations properly and the fundamentals, and he has that, and he masters that, and he perfects that, and he applies it, it's better for the person to have that than the person to have the whole Quran memorized and he's jahil of the usul, of the aqidah and the manahij, where he cannot understand it properly. You have people out there that have the whole Quran memorized and are still committing major polytheism. Do they understand the Quran? The whole Quran is in making war with shirk. War with shirk and laying down the tawheed of Allah. The whole Quran, from beginning to end, is making war with polytheism and establishing the tawheed. The whole Quran from beginning to end. And you find people that are what? Still going around graves and making tawaf around graves and making dua to other than Allah. They understand the Quran? Do they understand it? They don't understand it. Even though they have the whole Quran memorized. Jahil of the what? The fundamentals and the principles. Jahil. People that know Arabic, people have it memorized, and still are misled. So it's not the fact that it's just mere memorization. It's about learning the principles and applying it when it's time for it to be applied. It's not just mere just quoting and memorization. Memorization is one thing, but we focus on also likewise instilling in our children the fundamentals and the principles and laying it down. Make sure they have it memorized and understanding it. And do it when it necessitates. Asking them questions. If I make dua to other than Allah, what does that mean? Asking your son that. If you was to raise your hands and make dua and ask other than Allah, what does that mean? If right now, if you was to go to a soothsayer fortune teller, son, what does that necessitate? Son, right now, if someone's to read your palm, what is that? What is that called? Is that permissible in our religion? Son, right now, if you was to go outside and you see some crows fly over your head, does that mean that you're going to have a bad day? If you walk under a ladder, son, and some paint fell on you, if you look in the mirror and it broke, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to have a bad day? If you was to wear a rabbit's foot, what is that called? Ask your children these questions. This is establishing the tawheed in them. Right now, democracy. What is democracy? Sit down when he starts to get older and understand. Do we believe in democracy, that democracy is best for us? Should we be voting? What do the Muslims do as far as, for example, when we see these type of things going on, what is our belief? What is our belief in regards, for example, this Friday the 13th? Friday the 13th today is what, son? What does that mean? Does that have any significance in our religion? These things we should be asking them. So instill in them, what is our position? What do they believe? Because if they believe, for example, now I'm going outside and right now the crows are flying this way, so that means that my day is I'm going to have a bad day. Man, this crows flew over my head and even some bird dung fell on my top of my head, so that means that's a good thing, or it's a good sign for my day. All that's batil. All that's things that we have to instill in that has no significance, has no meaning. All those things in which the Prophet ﷺ came in order to make war with, and also to negate, and also to make sure that the people do not believe those type of beliefs. So the three cells breaks down to what, everyone? Number one, the nafs that's mutma'inna, nafs al-lawama, and then what, everyone? Nafs al-ammaratu bis-su. One soul or one self that commands you to do evil. So if you notice in Khutbah al-Haajah, it says, وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شُرُورِ أَنفُسِنَا وَسَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves and the evilness of our actions. For the evilness of our actions, سَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا. In regards to the evil, what time is it, Abu Khalil? I'm sorry. This is 142. طيب. سيئات أعمالنا, in regards to ourselves, and seeking refuge in Allah from the evilness of our actions, likewise. سيئات أعمالنا. So we asking Allah to give us refuge from the evilness of our actions, including likewise in regards to those type of selves in which Allah also likewise has said in the Quran. Those three categories that we mentioned has been mentioned all in the Quran. Ya ayyatuhan nafs, nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah, which is the Surah Al-Fajr, and also likewise the Surah Al-Qiyamah, la uqsimu bi yawm al-qiyamah wa la uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. That's also in Surah Al-Qiyamah. Allah swore by the soul that is what? Lawwama, that's constantly blaming himself. And also likewise the Surah Yusuf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, inna nafsa la ammaratun bis-su'. Verily the nafs, that it commands one to do evil. So we seek refuge in Allah from the evilness of ourselves and the evilness of our evil actions. Sayyati a'malina. And also likewise it says, and I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. I testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as in regards to different narrations that you'll find, where you find some people say, Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nastahdi. You find people say that. Wa natubu ilayhi. He said, in regards to this, Imam al-Albani also mentions this likewise. He said that hasn't been what? Affirmed. That has not been affirmed upon the Prophet ﷺ that he says that. That he said that in Khutbah al-Haajah. Nastahdi, nastahdihi, wa natubu ilayhi. He said it's not been affirmed that the Prophet ﷺ that has said this. Rather, those narrations are weak. He says if one mentions Khutbah al-Haajah, then you should stick to the narration and not go outside of that. Also, likewise, Ibn al-Uthaymin said that likewise the same thing. He said that istihda, or asking Allah for guidance, even though linguistically it's correct, but it has not been affirmed that the Prophet ﷺ said it here, in this particular what? Dua. Or this prayer of need, Khutbah al-Haajah, that he did not mention nastahdihi wa natubu ilayh. That's also from those things that you'll find widespread, that the people what? Practice. The narration in regards to it says, it's the evilness of ourselves. The evilness of ourselves, you'll find that it breaks down into two types where it has a beginning and an ending. For the evil that has a beginning, al-bidayat, meaning that one, if he commits it, if one commits the sin, that's the bidayat of the sin. Meaning start off by oneself commanded him to do evil, or the shaitan whispered to him. If he answered the call, what came as a result of it, he committed the sin. That's the beginning. The ending, and what comes as a result of it, if one does not make tawbah and have that regret, then what comes as a result of it is the outcome in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can afflict the slave as a result of the sin. And that, from the effects of it, or the endings of as regards to the sayyati al-a'mal, from the evil actions, could be in regards to one or two things. It can mess up his insight of making decisions, as we talked about before. As we know, sins can mess up one's insight, and it can mess up his decision and seeing clear in his judgment. As we talked about the ayah in which Allah Ta'ala says, Inna anzalna ilayka al-kitab litahkuma bayna an-nas bima araha Allah. Inna anzalna ilayka al-kitab bil-haq litahkuma bayna an-nas bima araha Allah. Wa la takuna lil-kha'inina khasima wastaghfir Allah inna Allah kana tawwaban rahima. That Allah Ta'ala says in His book, verily we have descended upon you the book with haqq, in order that you judge between the people. And do not be for the kha'inina khasima wastaghfirillah. Seek Allah's forgiveness. So if a person falls into evil, and also likewise, if he wants to inaugurate and start in a matter, that he gives precedence to istighfar. Istighfar will wipe away the athar al-dhunub, and it will allow him to have better judgment, and it will allow him to see clearly and have a better judgment. So if you notice that the sins can mess up one's judgment, if you look inside the ayah, Allah Ta'ala says, وَاسْتَغْفِرِ seek Allah's forgiveness. And we said that the tafsir of the ayah, Ya Ma'ash al-Ikhwa, in regards to that ayah, said that our sins can mess up your better judgment. It can mess up the judgment until one does not see clear and he takes a clear judgment, in which can mess it up, in which he will fall into some type of oppression in the judgment that he takes for that affair because of his sins. And that's why we talked about last week that Shaykh al-Islam, if he found out and he read a mas'ala or a particular matter or issue in which it was hard for him to understand and it was difficult for him to understand, that he would seek forgiveness of Allah Ta'ala. He would seek istighfar. He said, I will seek Allah's forgiveness until Allah unlocked for me the understanding of that particular matter. He said, or else, hence, before that, I found it extremely difficult to understand a matter until I saw Allah's forgiveness, and then Allah unlocked for me to understand it properly. So like we said, this is an example to show what everyone, how sins and the athar can mess up one's judgment and how him seeing clearly and making things hard for him. And that's the reason why Allah Ta'ala says in this book, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يُرِيدُ أَن يُصِيبَهُم بِبَعْضِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ. For Allah Ta'ala says in this book, if they was to turn away, meaning if the haqq was to come to them and they turned away from it, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ, that Allah Ta'ala, that He wanted to afflict them because of their sins. And verily the majority of the people are fasiqeen. Verily the majority of the people are what? One's transgressing the bounds. For if Allah Ta'ala afflicts one because of his sins, what comes as a result of it is what? Is an affliction. You tired? If you're tired, go ahead and lay down. Go ahead and lay down. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَاعْلَمْ أَنْ إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهَ أَن يُصِيبَهُم بِبَعْضِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ. That's the ayah. Allah Ta'ala says in His book, أَنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهَ أَن يُصِيبَهُم بِبَعْضِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ لَفَاسِقُونَ. And Allah Ta'ala says in His book, if the people turn away from i'rad, one day I'm gonna have to talk about make some type of quyud, restrictions on children during lessons. If you're trying to focus, it throws you off. Then you have the child, he's looking cute, and everybody's looking high, and everybody's preoccupied. طيب. If they used to turn away, what's the sin they committed, which is the beginning, which is what? Them turning away. Then what came as a result of it is what? That Allah Ta'ala afflicted them. So you have what they call the bidayah of the sin, and then you had the what? What came as a result of it. So the first part is what? They turned away. They had the choice. Allah didn't force them. They turned away, and which came as a result of it, Allah Ta'ala afflicted them. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ يُصِيبَهُم بِبَعْضِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ. That Allah Ta'ala wanted to afflict him due to his sins. Or wanted to afflict them due to their sins. And the majority of the people are fasiqeen. So inshallah, bi'idhnillah, we'll stop here and we'll continue maybe next week. Inshallah, that'll suffice for today. But maybe, ma'ashal ikhwa, if one can, try to, if our children or babies, if we can try to maybe just take some time out to try to learn our lessons and to take the knowledge seriously. And our children, inshallah, maybe we can try to figure out a way that can maybe somebody can watch their children or something so we can have an intensity as far as trying to have focus in the lessons. But our children, subhanAllah, so we can put everything in its proper place. See? Here, put it up here. Give us the cups. We won't pour it. That's it. Hand me the cup. Oh. Any questions about the lessons? Just slide it under the door, sisters, if they can. Yeah, stop it. Mm-hmm. One of the three ways is to meet Allah with a sound heart, is purifying his aqeedah,